A Rose is a Rose. Final chapter. Chapter 9. By Spacebrony. Luna watched, eyes wide with fear, as the nighttime horizon danced with flames. A light breeze shook the flowers along the railing of the highest balcony in the castle. From such a height, it seemed as if she could see the curvature of the globe. In every direction was the small dance of distant infernos, the flames growing nearer like the spreading burn of a parchment above a candle.
The fire pillar has fallen. They haven't made it back in time.
She didn't need to feel the approaching horror in the distance as proof. She could feel it in the air. She could even feel it in her horn. Her connection to the spring, the connection shared by all unicorns and alicorns alike, one which most unicorns didn't even know existed, was being severed. In the distance, the burning raged on, greedily eating through the forest.
He'll soon reach us. The safeguard must be activated.
The sight of mirror shards on the walls on the floor of her sister's room was nearly as painful as the sight of the approaching destruction. She tried using magic to sweep away the glass, but none came. Instead, she felt a dull ache in her forehead, like that of an overworked muscle. Neglecting the shards, she continued her search.
She said it would be here. Why is it not here?
A horrifying thought struck her.
What if he knew about it? What if he knew about it and took it when he took her?
There'd be no hope. Without magic, all of Equestria would fall to the oncoming doom. She thought back to the day Celestia told her of the safeguard, the day discord broke free. Closing her eyes tightly, the scene played through her mind.
You are to stay hidden. Do you understand? If something happens to me, I need you to do something. You are to activate the safeguard. But Tia! No. No buts. Listen. You will find the safeguard when you find yourself. But what does that mean? Why tell me in riddles? Why can't I help you? Together, we could... If he is truly loose, then he is listening right now. I will only tell you what is safe. The safeguard is a reserve store of magic, separate even from the spring. A backup, which I created with the help of an assembly of the most talented and unicorns of that time, including Starscroll the Bearded. That was the last time Discord was defeated, and it was meant to add to its protection from threats like his. I can't say more. If you were to gain access to it, he could grow even stronger. He's more dangerous than he seems, Luna. Beneath his eccentric exterior is something darker. The root of discord is absolute evil. Stay hidden, and remember the safeguard. Goodbye, little sister. Wait! Tia! In her mind, the memory faded, just as he had faded when her sister had teleported her away. It had been like the moon all over again. And so deep down she understood her sister's reasoning. She was right. Separation was the only way, and the safeguard was hidden where she'd find herself. She hadn't needed that day, the day of discord. The elements took care of him. But this new danger was literally on the horizon. The mysterious safeguard was the only recourse Luna could take care of. She didn't know what it was, where it was, or how to use it. But if Celestia could protect them from discord, she hoped it would help the defense against the approaching havoc. Frantically, she glanced out the window. Though still distant, the line of destruction drew nearer, fueled by the growing instability within the planes of existence. Under the bed, in the nightstand drawer, in the closet, nothing but trinkets and forgotten socks, and one abacus. Back to the dresser, she peered down at the broken mirror shards, morbidly kicking out one in defeat. I don't even know what I'm looking for. Why the riddle? Why couldn't you have just told me? There was no response. 10, 11, 12 Lunas stared back at her, each living in a glass world, each wearing a look of loss and fear. As she watched, however, those expressed changed into a dawning realization. You'll find it where you find yourself. She smiled. Next time, leave the riddles to Discord, sister, she thought. This is actually quite obvious. Little by little, she pieced together the mirror, pushing each shard into place along its complementary piece, so tightly that the cracks only seemed to disappear altogether. When she was finished, only one Luna stared back, still worried and frightened, but now also hopeful. She lifted it up. The cracks were gone.
The oblong mirror was whole again, an encouraging sign.
What now?
She thought for a second, cursing her sister for making everything so complicated. Then on a whim, she stared intently at her reflection, and spoke.
Equestria is in danger. The safeguard must be activated. Celestia has been taken, the pillar has fallen, and the destruction of instability is approaching. The spring has been taken captive. No magic is available to us. Please, help!
Her reflection, anxious and frightened, stared back silently. Luna chastised herself for being so foolish.
Why did I expect that to work? If I need magic to activate it, all hope is lost. The spring!
Your request has been heard. The Luna from within the mirror responded. Luna gasped. A lifetime of experience with unusual magic, and still not prepared to see herself speaking back, using her own voice to say the words that were not her own.
With no spring to which to draw magic, the castle's emergency supply will be utilized, she continued. The supply is large, but not intended to last. If it runs out before the spring is restored, nothing can stop the approaching destruction. I am sorry. I wish there was more I could do. Good luck.
Wait! She shouted at herself. Weird sentence. Gripping the mirror so tightly that her lips ached.
Is there anything I could do? Anything!
For a moment, she thought it was too late, that the magic had vanished, and the mirror once again showed nothing more than her reflection. Then Mirror Luna spoke.
Hope,
she said. In the darkness of her room, Apple Bloom couldn't sleep. Dreams of frightening noises and flashes of red kept her tossing and turning and startled awake. Now those dreams were fading, leaving nothing behind but a feeling of foreboding and fear. She slid out from under her covers, knowing Applejack would make room in her bed, just like always. With the comfort of her older sister's warm body and deep breathing, she too would drift off. All fears forgotten and nightmares vanished. Then she stopped, remembering her sister's departure, the hug goodbye, and the promise to be back soon. With a sigh, she changed destination from Applejack's empty room to the open window, and pretty soon to Big Mac's room, but we'll get there, where a slight breeze played upon the drawn curtains. She peered out to the stars, which silently winked at her.
Please, come back soon.
She frowned at the stars, which only winked more in return. She knew only of a few details of her sister's journey. She had caught her whispering with Big Mac the night before she left. Something about Celestia, Fluttershy, and a flower.
She couldn't even tell me where she went,
she thought, resting her head on the elbows. Something in the sky broke her from her thoughts. With a flash, the blue pinpoint of light outshone the stars, directly over the distant Canterlot Castle. Then it was gone. A moment later, a translucent blue field began growing from the same point, spreading out and down, until it covered the entire sky, stretching and warping the stars into a nebula of azure spots. Apple Blue stared in silent awe a moment longer. Then she ran to wake Big Mac. Outside the protective dome, the destruction raged on. Wow! Thanks, Shining! The first one who arrived did so with uneasiness and fearful memories of her previous visit. Applejack trudged against the force of snowy wind to the plateau that acted as final resting place before her ascent to the Spring of Magic. The path of that ascent stood before her exactly as she remembered it, narrow and steep, with towering, egg-shaped stones lining both sides. And finally, at the end of that snowy climb, was the gaping cavern mouth that had occupied her dreams ever since her narrow escape from the figure within. Now, however, no light burst from the entrance. All was quiet. All was dark. The rose fragments stopped, settling against a mound of snow that had pushed along like a broom. For a moment, Applejack stood quietly, the wind whispering wordlessly into her ears, the cold beginning to bite at her hooves. A horrible sense of déjà vu came over her, as if she were reliving the nightmare all over again. She struggled up the path, reached the top, peered into the gaping mouth of the spring, see Celestia lying there, helplessly, and behind her, instead of 2 pillars missing, all 6 would be destroyed. And this time, she wouldn't be able to escape before he showed up, and surely he would capture her, question her, and if Celestia couldn't escape him, how in the world could she? Applejack! Pinky tackled her in a hug, wrapping her around her like a blanket. Planky, you made it! I know you would. Just a minute ago, I would have given my hat 20 times over just to hear your voice. She laughed when Pinky squeezed her tighter, the pink mare tickling her nose. Well, you'll forgive me for leaving you like I did. I know how sensitive you could be, and I thought, Applejack. Pinky held her friend by the shoulders, staring solemnly into her eyes. Applejack stared back in anticipation, unused to such a serious tone from her eccentric friend. Then a grin spread across Pinky's face, and her voice dropped to a low mimicry. I reckon if you all hadn't left me in such a calm manner, I'd have more problems than a porcupine in a balloon factory. Applejack burst into laughter, holding her hat to her chest while she rolled into the snow, protected from its sting by the warmth of her friend, who sat next to her, practically bounced as she giggled. A voice somehow broke through the laughter and wind. Rarity, I'm telling you, that can't be Applejack. She doesn't sound anything like that. The response was even clearer, closer, and annoyed. Twilight, who else do we know talks like that? Or Mrs. Porcupines? Pinkie Pie and Applejack collected themselves long enough to glance at each other, then burst out laughing again. Twilight! Where are they? Applejack called between dying giggles. Good to see you all again. Before she turned through speaking, she felt Twilight's tiny embrace, which she eagerly returned. Applejack, you have no idea how great it is to see you. You too, Pinky. How long have you been waiting here? I've only been here a few minutes. Then Pinky showed up, and only a minute later, you both appeared. Applejack responded, ending the hug. When did you catch up with Rarity? Rarity, who was fancying her own embrace with Pinky, answered for Twilight. We only met up just around the bend, only about a few minutes more before entering up here. Have you heard anything about the others? If I don't see Fluttershy in the next 30 seconds, I am turning right back around to find her! Applejack smiled. I'll appreciate your attitude, Rarity, but I don't think that'll be necessary. My rose piece led me here. Pinky's led her here, and I can see how yours led you here. I'm sure Fluttershy and Dance will show up any second. She squinted into the distance, which happened to only be a few yards away, since the heavy snow made vision almost impossible. And just what do y'all know? I see a blue Pegasus coming here now. Dash! Twilight cheered, hopping gleefully while Pinky somehow managed to grin even further. Upon hearing her name, Dash broke into a sprint, wings useless in the gusty blizzard, until she, Applejack, noticed her rose fragment was only a nose away from Rarity. Rarity! I'm so sorry. I wish I could have stayed, but I couldn't, because I could barely leave again. And if you're mad at me, that's okay. You should be at me. I would be mad at me. I am mad at me. But you should know that Rarity cut off the blabbering Pegasus with a soft, yet firm hug. How could I be mad at my own friend, the one who saved my life? Rainbow Dash said nothing for a moment. Then she vividly returned the embrace. I won't ever leave you again. Twilight noted in the wavering of her friend's voice that she had rarely seen Dash ever so emotional. Whatever happened between Rarity and Rainbow Dash, it must have breached the Pegasus's unbreakable loyalty, a wound that bit her to the core. And I thought I was the dramatic one. Rarity giggled. The same emotion was present in her voice. Twilight and Pinky made room as Applejack stepped toward the two embracing friends. And as much as I like to hear what will happen between you two, I think I'll have to wait. Fluttershy's still missing. Twilight, do you think you can see another beam? Maybe she see it? I don't know, she said, glancing nervously over Applejack's shoulder. Is that the place? The spring. Is this where you came from when you separated from us? They all turned toward the cavern, that threatening puncture at the end of the path, as if expecting to see some horrible monstrosity looming within the entrance. Applejack's failed attempt at confidence only made her sound more uncertain than ever. Yep, this is it. Ugh, this place gives me the creeps, Dash said. I agree, Pinky said. She lowered her head, preparing to divulge a terrifying secret. And I heard that at altitudes like this, wire bowls at a lower temperature. Dash turned to her friend in surprise. Really? Wait, Pinky, that's not scary. It is if you're a baker! Applejack, never one for games in times of stress, rolled her eyes. We don't have time for this. Fluttershy's still missing. Twilight, can you or can you not send up a flare?
If there's any pony in there, she said, nodding toward the cavern, will they see it? Try. I can hardly see my hoof in front of my face. I think it's a risk worth the take. We can't do anything without Fluttershy. If Wosie's hurt, Wosie needs our help. We don't have a choice. Don't send it straight up. Send it out, the way we all came from. Rarity nodded in agreement. Try making it dimmer than usual, she suggested. So if there is any pony in there, he won't see it. Twilight sighed. All right then. Here we go. She took one last nervous glance toward the camera, and then began formulating the flare. 3 things happened at once. Twilight gasped in surprise and confusion at a sharp pain in her forehead. In her mind she felt a scraping, like a ladle meeting hot warm water but the rough bottom of the barrel. Then the unexpected sensation sent a shiver down her spine and planted a dull ache in her head. Fluttershy stumbled out of the blizzard and into a circle of friends collapsing in the center. The cavern's mouth flashed with otherworldly light, whiter and brighter than ivory snow. And while this happened, while the group attempted to make sense of the sudden burst of activity, Fluttershy's rose fragment, which had led her into her circle of friends, slid off unnoticed. It pushed through several feet of snow until it found the other shards, was assembled in a similar circle, and slid its way into the center. While the 5 friends cared for Fluttershy, the fragments came together. It became whole while a low hum and dim, unnoticed flash of red and green. While her friends crowded her, tried to wake her, tapped her, and called her name, Fluttershy's rose sat in the snow, quiet, whole, and beautiful as ever. 3 hours. In only 3 hours, the destruction on the horizon had grown from a distant flame to a maelstrom of terror just outside the safeguard shield. Burnt, charred logs extended into the distance for miles. From the observatory of the castle, Luna could see where the Everfree Forest once stood. Now it was a wasteland. The few trees standing burned quickly, eventually adding to the corpses of their companions who littered around like leaves. Luckily, the Tree of Harmony was fine. Luna watched this all pensively. Within moments, the rolling horror would reach the edge of the forest and enter the occupied land. If the shield didn't hold up, Fluttershy's cottage would be the first to go, followed by the other villagers who lived on the outskirts. Moments now, Luna watched on. How much magic does the shield have from which to draw? Is it with the spring unavailable? How much magic does the backup source contain? How long can it last? Can it even hold up to a threat such as this? At this point, I'd like to say, in case of emergency, get this courthouse stone! Luna held her breath. The first of the flames had reached the last few trees of the Everfree, not just charring them, but literally uprooting them, forcibly pulling them from the ground. Then, just outside Fluttershy's chicken coop, they stopped. The faint blue rippling shield flared hot purple as the flames licked across it to the outside, unable to break through. Instead, riding up the outside of the dome. Within minutes, the entire dome stretched from Ponyville to Canterlot, Everfree to Cloudsdale, was engulfed by the unrelenting inferno. The stars were wiped away as the burning red and yellow wrapped itself over the safeguard, which held strong. How long will it hold? Luna thought. Luna. She jumped at the voice behind her, so absorbed by the terror outside the shield she hadn't noticed her company. It was probably the mayor. The first thing Luna had done after activating the safeguard was alert all residents of Ponyville, Canterlot, Cloudsdale to report to Canterlot Castle immediately. Their trains had all run through the night, keeping running still, carrying the last of the Ponyvillians. Nearly all the Cloudsdale Pegasi had finished the migration, and were perched up and down the castle's exterior, allowing room for the Earth and Unicorn ponies inside the towers, dining halls, cellars, bedrooms, guest rooms, and all other open spaces to Stonewall Castle. The grounds were filled with 4 times their possible occupancy. And of course, Cayen's helped out too. The bravest watched the destruction with wide eyes from outside in the garden, while the fillies and foals were held closely by their parents within the protective walls. She had told them what she could, of the danger outside, the shield that guarded them, the missing Celestia, loss of magic, the 6 that were working to save them. It's all right, Dinky. We're all gonna be okay. She didn't tell them about the spring. The mayor had been demanding more answers from her all night, despite her insistence that all she could. Now she was here,
addressing Luna by her first name, ignoring her title as princess. Luna was too tired for the old rays to rise up, too worried for her darker side to contribute to her annoyance. So it was turned around. It was of an expression of weakening patience. Nothing more. That expression quickly slipped away as one of joy and shock took over. Tia! They embraced. Tia, how? He let me go. What? He did. His excuse was that he was afraid of how to dispose of me. So he sent me away. I think he was lying to himself. He felt guilty. And that means there is a chance. Guilt? Guilt? Guilty? Luna stammered in rage. Guilty? He has destroyed untold amounts of forests, and probably living creatures within those forests, and if it weren't for the safeguard, he would have destroyed us! Everything! Ponyville, Canterlot, Cloudseal, everything! For all we know, Appaloosa is burning right now, and he feels guilty? Sister, if he felt guilty, there wouldn't be death and destruction in every direction right now. We wouldn't have the need for the safeguard if he felt guilty. If he felt guilty, you wouldn't be walking with a limp or holding a leg like that. Yes, I saw that, even if you tried to hide it. If that despicable excuse for a living creature felt guilty! Luna, the younger sister cut off, once again amazed by the ability of her sister to say so much in so few words. Luna, the mind is a deep, dark place. You should know yourself. Luna looked down. Yes, she certainly knew that. When one is obsessed by something, taken by it, absolutely entrenched in one goal, a single objective, then nothing else becomes important. Such is our poor Thade. That is his name. The spring told me. Luna looked back up, met her sister's glowing eyes. In the mind, one sees only what he or she sees. Do you understand that? He saw me pinned to an altar, helpless, and he knew he did that. He felt guilt. He did not see this. She waved toward the sky. Luna followed her gesture, and saw the flames engulfing the dome. It was held strong, but glowed more dimly. He does not see this, so he does not think about it. He knows it is true. But without seeing it, he can pretend it means nothing. Right now, he only sees her, the object of his obsession. Does he really love her? I don't know. I hope he does. It would make his actions more pitiable. Luna considered all this, and tried to determine what it meant. But what do we do? Now what do we do? We're stuck here behind the safeguard, aren't we? We can't leave to help them? No, we can't leave. You have told the citizens what is happening, I assume. Yes. It was difficult without magic. Ponyville's mail service is surprisingly effective, however. The message was delivered to every soul in the area. The spirit of these ponies never ceases to amaze me. They managed to get all of Ponyville, all of it, to the castle by train in only one night. All the Clydesdale flew over, too. Celestia smiled. Yes, the power of the spirit can do amazing things. She turned her eyes to the engulfing devastation. Sometimes, horrible things. You should probably speak to them. Every pony, I mean. Show them that you are well. And probably even that would be more helpful. Yes, I will. Then we wait. But Tia, what can we do besides wait? Surely there must be something. Celestia turned to her sister. You activated the safeguard, yes? Did it tell you to do anything? Yes. Hope. Then hope we shall. Fluttershy, get up, darling. Fluttershy. Sound and light swam in and out. The voice grew and fell, like the tide of an empty breach. His soft tone was new, yet familiar. It brought back memories that earlier than her earliest memories were nothing more than blurs of color and voices. Fluttershy, get up. She slowly opened her eyes. The sudden brightness blinded her, momentarily. Then she could see the blue sky, interrupted here and there by whispered clouds that moved deliberately without hurry. Fluttershy. She realized she was laying on her back. Grass, or something softer, grew around her, and the air had the scent of a field in the spring, light and full of life, cool and breezy. She turned on her side, lifting herself from the grass in search of the owner of that voice. He was a light blue Pegasus, the color of the sky, and he was smiling at her, standing by her side, watching her with gray eyes of sadness, sympathy, but mostly love. He spoke. Do you know?
Daddy?
He smiled again. Yes. She ran to him, embracing him and holding herself around his neck.
I miss you.
She buried her head against his neck, feeling his soft coat and letting it dry her tears. He held on to her. I missed you too. I am very proud of you. He felt a tear fell from his eye and wiped it away as he continued the embrace. A cool breeze swept through the field, gently rustling the grass in a wave that washed around them both. After a moment that lasted forever, but not long enough, he pulled her away, looking directly into her damp turquoise eyes. His own eyes. There are a lot of things I have to tell you, and we don't have much time. Follow me, dear. She smiled.
Anywhere.
They walked on, through the field. His wing clasped back her neck, pulling her close, her head leaning against his. Your rose, Fluttershy. Do you know why it broke? They were heading along a path toward the green field, nearing a hill.
Because of my friends?
He smiled. Yes, that is one way to think about it. The rose has never been used before. There has never been an emergency like this one since the rose's creation. In all my years of guarding it, weighing it for it to show signs of activity or danger, I've never seen it do anything out of the ordinary. I wasn't so sure what I was looking for. What would it do? Glow? Teleport me to where I could use it? I wasn't sure. Maybe it actually decides what to do. Maybe, when it felt a disturbance at the spring, it decided to split 6 ways because it understood the strength of your friendship. He turned to look at her, still holding her tightly under his wing. They reached the top of the hill, and in the distance, Fluttershy could see a cottage where the field ended at the edge of a forest, much like her own. I don't think we'll ever know for sure. The important thing is, it brought you all back together after you separated. It brought you to the spring. And, because we are talking to one another right now, it has brought you to me. Fluttershy took in her surroundings again. Another breeze swept through the field.
It brought you to me? But where are we?
Here. Stop. They stopped together at the peak of the rolling hill. See the cottage in the distance. Do you recognize it? She turned toward the little house again.
It looks kind of like mine.
And it did. There was another window above the door, and the chicken coop was a little smaller, but other than that, it was nearly identical. Do you remember the story of the rose? The story Princess Luna has told you.
Yes. The story of the unicorn mare who wanted to control the spring.
He took off his wing off her back, stepping away to reveal the ground beneath them. Look down. Look. She followed his gaze. Embedded in the ground before her was a rectangular stone marker, about the size of a book cover. Inscribed upon it was an epitaph, which she read.
Here lies the body of a fool, consumed by love, absorbed by power, who died trying to make things right. She succeeded. I did not know her name, but she left me with the source of her salvation, born from the spring itself, to be used here to stop those who would make the same mistake. Here lies Rose, so named because she, Rose, beyond herself, died for love, died to protect us all. Never let us forget her courage, and that, even in the most guided of souls, there's always hope.
Fluttershy guessed.
This is her grave?
Her father nodded solemnly. She looked to the distance of the edge of the forest, where the cottage sat in the quiet desolation.
Then, that cottage, that's the cottage of the Pegasus who took her in. The one she told her story to. The one she gave the rose to.
Yes, Fluttershy. My great-grandfather. Like Luna told you, after she made the rose, The mare teleported herself away from the spring, and ended up here, in this field. She was weak, and though my great-grandfather cared for her, she didn't make it. This marks where he put her to rest. He kept the rose and passed it down to his son, my grandfather, who passed it down to my father, who passed it down to me, and I passed it down to you. She looked in his eyes, and after a moment of silence, they embraced again.
Then, what does it do?
She asked, her face against his neck, her eyes shut tightly.
The rose. Will it stop him? Will it fix the spring?
That's why I brought you here, darling. That is what I must tell you. She pulled herself from the embrace and stared back down.
What do you mean?
He smiled gently. She looked like her mother. He saw it in her yellow coat, her soft voice, and the way she tilted her head when she asked a question. At that moment, more than any other moment, he felt the blow of every second he hadn't been with her. Every smile he wasn't there to see. Her first words, her first flight, her first loose tooth, her gaining her cutie mark. But nothing could change that. Both their futures rested on this meeting and what he had to tell her. The rose has done its job. It can't fix the spring or rebuild the pillars, or defeat our misguided friend. The rose has done all it can do, because the rose has brought you to Thade. Fluttershy stared at her father, trying to understand.
What do you mean? The rose can't do anything?
No, darling. It does everything it needs to. The only reason the mare lived long enough to tell her story and pass down the rose was because she received care and sympathy from our long-gone relative. She was loved. That gave her the strength she needed. That is what allowed her to die, not as a power-hungry fool, but as a symbol of hope. Do you think it was coincidence that her random, unguided teleportation brought her to this very field? It was not. The rose brought her here. The rose brought her here because that is what the rose does. It seeks out the kind, brings them to those that need love, those that have a hole in their hearts and are willing to do something dangerous to fill it. The rose brought you to the spring because you are what our poor friend needs. You have the same kindness that your great-great-grandfather had. He rescued the mare he named Rose. And now you must rescue Thade. Fluttershy had listened with growing amazement, her mind attempting to fully comprehend what her father had just told her.
So you mean I have to stop him?
He smiled that sad little smile again. Yes, honey. That's what you have to do.
But isn't he dangerous? Daddy, isn't he evil?
He stepped closer, holding his head inches from hers. Once again, he got lost in those eyes. No, Fluttershy. Not evil. Evil is rare. Evil only happens once in the history of each world. Thade is lost. You have to find him. You have to help him. He's looking, but he's looking in the wrong direction. Show him the way, darling. Show him the path. Can you do that, dear? She nodded, then grabbed her father in yet another hug. She tried to hold on to that moment for as long as possible, to make it last, to memorize the texture of his coat, the sound of his voice, his scent, like morning dew. It's time for you to go, dear. She couldn't bring herself to pull away from his soft neck.
I see you again?
Her whole body shook with emotion. Of course, Fluttershy. Every morning when the sun rises, look, and you'll see me. Look at the clouds and in the stars, and I'll be there watching you too, as I always have. In the end, we'll find each other again. You, I, and your mother. It happens to all who wait. You'll see. The next world is just as beautiful as the first. Maybe more so. That's just how life works. So go, live yours, and help Thade live his. She was crying now, into his shoulder, holding on to him because she had never been able to do so before, and had a lifetime ahead of her before she could do again.
I will. I will.
Her eyes were shut tight, and her face was still buried against his back. Go on, dear. Go help some pony who needs it. I almost forgot. Your mother sends her love. His voice was fading now, even as she embraced him, crying into his warm back. I love you, honey. Never forget that there is hope, even for those who seem lost. I love you. His voice had completely faded, his scent replaced by the scent of roses. Before she could open her eyes, another voice came, a voice she had never heard before. She's moving! I saw her! She opened her eyes! Immediately, her friends were helping her by her side, helping her up. Twilight pulled her close, warming her and rubbing off the snow that had collected her side. Fluttershy, what happened? Are you okay? She blinked, wiping tears from her eyes. Piggy pounced. Have you been crying? What's wrong? What happened? Fluttershy looked at each of her 5 friends in turn, hoping to speak through her eyes. Before anything, she said aloud, I saw my father. I spoke with him. He told me what to do. Twilight's eyes widened. He told you how to use the rose? How to activate it? For the first time, Fluttershy noticed the light from the cavern's mouth. The light coming from the spring. Its white luminescence made it even brighter by the snow. Was seen to catch it, magnify it, and throw it back out. Oh no! He started already! I have to get there! Now! She began shuffling awkwardly through the snow, heading toward the stone-lined path that held the spring. Wait for us! Daz called, Slow down! She did stop, and turned back to her 5 friends. I'm sorry, but I have to do this alone. That's what my father told me. That's how it's supposed to be. Are you crazy? Daz started stumbling after her, shoving aside the snow, her wings too cold to lift her. You can't go in there alone! You can't! Dash! Twilight spoke softly and firmly. That's what her father said to do. That's what she says herself. That's how it has to be done. I don't know why, but that's what she wants. What? I think Twilight's right, Applejack added, stopping in front of Dash. Let her go. Dash frowned, outwardly frustrated and inwardly toned. They hadn't seen the look on Fluttershy's face when she flew away, leaving her weak and tired on the ground. It was a look she couldn't stand to see again, especially on Fluttershy. Fine! But the moment I hear a squeak, I'm heading in there, and none of you can stop me! You hear that, Fluttershy? As she heard, she didn't acknowledge it. Just before stepping past the first egg-like stone that lined the narrow, snow-covered path, she bent down to grab something. It was the rose, whole once more, as she tucked it carefully under her wing. Then, with her father's words echoing in her ears, she ascended the trail to the spring of magic. The effects were immediate. The instant he said the word, that ultimate spell, the cavern trembled slightly. This was it. His moment. The conclusion to his journey. The gateway to renewed happiness. Yet he worried, even still, about what he did not know. Or did not want to know. Movement to his left. He looked and smiled. Her feather, the fairy feather that floated down near her wing the day he met her, now lifted from the bowl near the altar and rose into the air. His eyes traced its path to the center of the circular cavern. It stopped at eye level, just before he stood. Then everything was drowned by white, was burst from the point the feather had hovered only a second before, like a leak in the dam. The feather was gone. In its place was the portal, the end of his journey, and the beginning of many more. The spring faded away, drowned out by the intensity of this tear in the fabric of worlds. And soon the portal wasn't before him, it was around him, white on all sides, so bright that if he looked down, his front legs would have been gone, replaced only by pure light, the color of nothing and everything. Everything was completely silent. He stood, listening to his heart race, his breath drawn in and out, his thoughts, a jumbled mess that said too much and knew too little. Then he heard her. Her first steps were quiet, even in the absolute silence. He turned, unsure what to expect, yet expecting all the same. He turned and saw her. She was exactly as he remembered. The gray of her coat burned brilliantly in the light. Her eyes the same blue turquoise. On her right wing there was a feather burnt slightly out of place.
Doesn't have been all those years ago when they fell in love in Silenzo. He couldn't move or speak. He could only watch as he stepped closer. Every ounce of love that he had felt for her the day he lost her returned in one paralyzing blow. While he recognized the color in her eyes, he didn't recognize the expression. He had expected many different emotions from her: confusion, bewilderment, joy, and deep down, he secretly hoped she would run to him, their years of separation wiped away, so that they could begin right where they left off. But her expression showed none of these. She stared at him with sympathy while she approached, almost pity, as if he were the one who needed safety. He was hardly able to process this. His entire mind was consumed by one thought. It was her. After all these years, it was her. Only a few paces away now. He could still touch her with an outstretched hoof if he wished. But he was still rooted in place. After a moment, he began to speak. Alaska. She smiled, and his heart broke. In that smile, he saw true sorrow, sympathy, and even love, but not the love that Laska had showed him.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
Her voice was smooth, song-like, and definitely not the raw, rough, tomboyish velvet of Laska's.
You poor, poor thing.
Real sympathy. Not patronizing, not mocking. He realized he was crying. You're not Laska. It was all he could manage to say. His mind was overwhelmed with confusion, disappointment, with no room left for anger. You are not Laska. Her voice, delicate and soft and still brimming in tears, seemed to echo in this universe of white.
I'm not her, but I know her, and I know you. I know what happened, and I know what you've done, and I know what you felt.
A glistening drop fell from her eye, down her nose, and disappeared forever into the white ground of nothing. You know her? He asked lamely, still unable to comprehend. It was her. That was Laska, but at the same time was not. The mare before him nodded sadly.
Yes, I met her after I met some pony that I lost. She wonders about you, Thade. She's worried.
She's worried about me? He nearly sputtered, too confused to decide how to feel. But I've spent my whole life worrying about her, thinking about her, and she worries for me? He tried to speak as though he were angry, but could not. All he felt was a hollow type of dread, as if all his fears were being realized. That smile, still that tender smile.
Look around you, Thade. What do you see? Do you like what you see? Will Laska like what you see?
As he watched, the vast empty white seemed to fade, and beyond it, the spring. It must have been his imagination, because he saw Celestia on the altar, still and soundless. The pillars were dust. This vision swam away as the white returned, blocking everything once more. It has to be done! Don't you understand? She was taken from me, stolen! She was a filly! A foe! What kind of world do we live in, when an innocent being could be taken so young, stolen away from everything that she loves, and everything that loves her? She couldn't even fly. She was a Pegasus who was never old enough to fly. He was breathing heavily now, nearly shouting. We had our whole lives ahead of us that day. I am doing this because the world killed one of its most beautiful creations, killed her in the very innocence of her youth. And on that day of her first kiss, if the world could be that cruel, that heartless, then what do I care if some trees burn down or if a few lives are lost? I am bringing justice! If not for me, then for her. I am giving back what was taken from her. That's what the world owes her. And I am willing to make any sacrifice to make it happen. She couldn't even fly! With these last words, he broke into a sob, and the mare ran to him, engulfing him in an embrace that he didn't refuse. She said nothing while he cried into her shoulder.
I just want her back, he gasped while his chest heaved with unpleasant tears. I just want to make things right.
I know,
She whispered, patting his head like a mother comforting a young foal.
I know you do. I know that pain. I lost a loved one too. My father passed away when I was very young.
She could feel the tears rising to her eyes.
I never even got to know him, Thade. But I think about him every day.
His sobs quieted, and she knew she had his attention.
It's so hard. I know it is. When I was little, I would see my friends hug their fathers goodbye when they were dropped off at school. I would see them racing into the park, or having a picnic, or having cowbell fights. I never got to do any of that.
She wiped the tears from her eyes.
He never got to tuck me in at night, or read me a story, or teach me how to fly, or teach me to read. So when I would see fathers with their children, loving each other and having what I couldn't, it hurt me so much. It was like being stung by a fire that wouldn't burn out. But it wasn't all self-pity and jealousy. I wasn't hurt because I didn't have him, but because he didn't have me. His life was gone. It was taken from him.
She was crying in earnest now, crying in his shoulder. Their roles reversed.
He never had another winter wrap-up. He couldn't share a sunrise with his daughter. Never made spell ponies with her. And that hurt just as bad.
She wiped her eyes again.
But I was never angry. Because life goes as all life goes. And friends and lovers can't be separated forever.
She pulled away from him so she could look him in the eyes. Large, brown eyes, filled with remorse and anger, guilt, hate, and love.
Thade, you don't want to do this. You're not getting revenge on the world. You're only hurting others. Ponies you never met. Yourself, Laska, you blame yourself, Thade, for something that wasn't your fault. Even worse, you think she blames you. You're afraid that she doesn't love you anymore. You're afraid she'll never forgive you. You're afraid that she hates you.
He sharpened his gaze upon her. It was as if she pulled her deepest fears, the one he kept hidden from himself, right out of his soul, and displayed them before him. He couldn't even handle his emotions dissected like this. Tears began blurring his vision, and his whole body shook where he stood.
She told me to tell you something. She says it's not true. She still loves you and just misses you just as much as you miss her. But she still worries. Because when she visits you and watches over you, she doesn't see the colt she fell in love with.
The tears flowed freely now, not the pretend years he had used to trick Celestia. Real tears. Tears he had been holding back for too many years. The mare, the beautiful mare that was and wasn't Laska, grabbed him again and pulled him close. He openly wept into her coat, realizing it wasn't gray. It was petal yellow. She smelled like roses. I just want her back. He sobbed again. She squeezed him even tighter, sobbing herself, needing him as much as he needed her, because she needed to make him see. Around them, the portal burnt on.
It wasn't fair what happened,
The mare whispered, her tears showing while she spoke.
You did nothing wrong. She doesn't blame you. No one is to blame. It couldn't have been prevented.
But it was my fault! He yelled through his sobs, holding her, taking comfort into the contour of her back, the same shape as Laska's. It is my fault! I thought I could take us back! I thought my magic was strong enough. But it wasn't. I was so stupid. If that makes it my fault. She held him close, caring for him like she cared all other creatures, except this one had a fracture that ran deep into his soul.
Fade. The world works in strange ways. Every pony feels their pain and loss at some point. But trying to take revenge on the world for your own personal sorrow won't help any pony at all. Losing some pony you love is the most difficult thing in the world. But you can let it go. You can lose yourself too.
It's too late, he breathed. No tears left to choke his voice. What can I do? It's too late.
It's not.
She looked down directly in the eyes. Suddenly, she was Laska.
You can make this stop.
Fight your battles, Thade. He forced himself to break eye contact and turned. Placing his back to her, he pulled off his cloak. The cloak he despised more than anything, afraid to look even though he knew what he would see. When he had been a young foal, eager for the mark on his flank that represented who he was and what his life meant, adults would tell horror stories of ponies who received their mark, but neglected their calling, causing the mark to slowly fade until it was gone. It had all been empty threats, fears put into the young so they wouldn't become lazy or languid. He had never heard of a pony actually losing his or her mark before, not outside of cliched fairy tales that he had outgrown by the time he could levitate a feather without thinking about it. So when his actually began to fade, about a year ago, an icy terror crept into his heart. He simply refused to believe that it could be true. The cloak represented to Thade every lie he had ever told himself, and it was those lies that pushed him forward, and those lies that he had cast aside as the black cloak was lost somewhere into consuming light. The mare saw his markless flank, but did not react. I know what I have to do now, he said, looking at the ground, his voice stronger, full of purpose. The portal. Every second it is held open, things grow worse. On the outside, I mean. I always thought it wouldn't close until Laska walked through. I was mostly right. In truth, it won't close until some pony steps through. He turned back, locking eyes with the mare who had entered his life so recently. Entered his life and saved it. Nothing I say now could ever take back the things I'd done. He realized there was an essential question he had failed to ask. What is your name? Her mouth turned up to a smile, the same one Laska wore when she told him her name.
Fluttershy.
Fluttershy, he said, feeling the word. He thought it was a good name. Fluttershy, there's nothing left for me. Not here, anyway. I lost her, and I threw everything else I had trying to get her back. I don't belong here. I don't deserve to be here. She sat closer toward him.
Fade, living isn't something that you have to earn. Every pony deserves to live. Life is a gift, not a reward.
Every pony deserves to live? Every pony but Laska, and your father. The words stung. She hadn't expected such harshness, unbaited cruelty. I'm sorry, he said, his face softened, once more threatened by tears. I didn't mean that. Do you see now? All I can do is hurt others. I can't stay here. He stepped closer, holding his head and nose away from hers. The tears finally came now, as he neared the end of his journey. I thought I was doing this for love, but I wasn't. It was all selflessness. Selflessness and guilt. A thought occurred to him. I hope there is some pony out there who loves you, he said.
She smiled. Every pony is loved by some pony.
Maybe. If that's true, then the one who loves me isn't in this world anymore. She's in the next. I need to be with her. He began to turn away.
Wait,
she said. He turned back inquisitively. She gently reached a hoof to her wing, searching under it until she pulled out one of the most amazing things Thade had ever seen. It was a rose, but it was also something more. An immaculate gem that seemed to radiate life. In his mind, he was in Silenzo again, handling Laska a rose, one of the billions in the field. Except now, he was a recipient.
Take it,
she said, holding it out to him. He stared out first at the rose, then at her. Suddenly, the fears and hatred he had felt before were gone. The sadness remained, and the guilt was even worse. He knew it was too late. She would accept him back, and he could do everything. Thank you. There was much more he wanted to say, and those two tiny words seemed to hang between them, as if waiting for a climax. Tell Celestia I'm sorry. Tell her she was right and I was wrong. Tell the ones who love you to make every moment count. To never take life for granted. To spend summer nights together. Never forget that the most important things you have are each other. But he couldn't say that. He wasn't ready, even now. He took the rose into his mouth like a dancer, staring into Laska's eyes the entire time, filling his own with the immense gratitude that part of it leaked down and ran into his face as tears. Without another word, he turned around for the last time, the rose still clutched in his mouth. He began walking forward, almost instantly becoming swallowed by the brightness that came from nowhere, which bled into the light, as if he were a shadow in the sun. Step into the light. He thought humorless. Maybe those poets were right. A sad thought struck him. I hope this is how it is for Laska. Then he was gone. Fluttershy stood alone in the cavern of the Spring of Magic, was now sent empty and quiet. On the ground before her, a rose struck through the crack of the floor, red with life, in a dusty cavern within fallen rock. The end. Now, people, I know this ending might seem kind of weird since there's still little problems, but I could have sworn that there was an epilogue added to this that we see some of the remains and ramifications what happened. Basically, thanks to they stepping in, the entire world got fixed. All the bad things and all the fires, everything was fixed like a freaking harmonizing wave. I don't remember if the main six came in to help fix the pillars. They might. And we see that, yes, Thane spends his moments of afterlife with Laska. So, yes, somewhere out there is an ending like that. But, for now, that's the end. Oh, this Vic. What can I talk about that I haven't said in the previous chapters? A whole lot, actually. You see, I think this ending was kind of perfect for Fluttershy. Applejack, yeah, I would expect the ending to have her duking it out with a monster, or duking it out with several other ponies, bashing their heads in and coming out with her hat flapping in the breeze. Twilight, you expect a magic duel or something that happened at the end of season 4 of the season 4 finale. That's who she is. That's part of her adventure aspect. That's part of her quest story. She would blast through or some sort of magic and end it all with her realizing how much her friends need her and taking a page out of Usagi's handbook, combine all her friends into her strength and become an amalgamation of all of her friends' strengths into one and then take one guy out. Sorry, I'm a lover of a mortal game. Rainbow Dash, you would expect her to engage in a sword fight or a hoof fight. The same could be said of Celestia, Luna, and so much more. But for Fluttershy? For Fluttershy, she's the element of kindness. So you would expect her ending to be one like this, where she would look past the rage, the anger, the hurt, the pain, and see what this guy really, truly needed. What sometimes all of us need. A shoulder to cry on. Remember, Thade lost her when he was a kid. Think of that. He lost some pony that he cared for when he was that young. His emotions, hormones, all this created a huge stockpile of madness in him. That type of thing can do weird things to a person. And sometimes you need the support of another. And that's who Fluttershy is. Heck, even in my favorite Fluttershy fanfic of all time, Last of the Dragon Lords, there's a moment where we see Fluttershy responding not with rage or hatred, but with kindness. And that's what this fic does for Fluttershy, and I think that's what some of the best Fluttershy adventure fics do to her. They take her out of her element, but
show that deep down inside, she probably has just as strong will as Dash, Applejack, Twilight, Rarity, and Pinkie Pie. Yeah, she's scared, but she's still brave enough to see through that fear to do what needs to be done for her friends and the ones she cares the most about. And so it happens here. First, I didn't need a weapon. She was one. Something that a guy like Thade probably wouldn't expect. Not being condemned or looking down as some sort of monster, but a shoulder to lean on. A kind, caring pony. And I guess that's what I like about the rows being separate. I didn't think about this until now, my second read through, but the rows splitting apart was kind of a good way to teach Fluttershy that, yes, sometimes you need to let go, but that separation, like when a loved one dies, or a girlfriend leaves you, won't happen for long. For in time, you'll come back together, or in another way, you're all still there. There's still a bond with you, even if you guys seem lost and unsure. And that's what this fic does beautifully. Is the girls' friendships. They're so bonded together, and the friendshiping moments between them is just so good. I could talk about it for hours. Do I have complaints? Well, yeah, no fic is perfect. If I took the time, I'd probably complain about Fallen Equestria. I mean, after all, this thing doesn't exactly break my top 10 list. Though it is in the top 20. For one, well, as I said, this is my shortest live read. When it comes to these multi-chapter fics outside the Luniverse, it's much too short. I mean, it's a balance here. It's the right length for what it needs to do. Get us to where we need to go. Fluttershy loses Rose. It's broken. Goes on quest. Gathers crystals together. End of story. It's the appropriate length for that arc, but I guess part of me just wants there to be a little bit more. More for the main six to do that helps push Fluttershy into that cavern. Or just a little more time with Thade and his backstory. Or just a little more time of the main six being lost. Or them all working together to try to find a way to get back to one another. But I guess then we wouldn't have such a good moments and this fic would go on too long. Second, yeah, there's been a few spelling or grammar errors, but that's from the copy I've been using. Kind of wish there was also a little more to the ending, but other than that, spacebrony, I think I can say for all of us Fluttershy fans, thank you for giving us such a wonderful, well done, and exquisite Fluttershy fanfic. One that touches upon who she is, the element of kindness, being more than just being a protector of animals or just being the one who goes,
"Oh, well, maybe we shouldn't."
But being a caretaker, a comforter, and a good friend, the one who listens. Thank you so much for granting us this type of fic. I know you deleted it for reasons I don't know and I don't care, but I would like to think that by doing this live read, I've given you a chance to see just how much your fanfic has actually touched some of us, because there are those of us, mainly me, who really enjoy this, because it touches on all the themes that Pony stands for. It touches all of our hearts, and manages to keep the girls in character while at the same time giving us a short, fun adventure that could easily be on the show itself. So thank you. Because I don't know if you appreciate, because I know that while you may think that this isn't up to your standards, it certainly is to mine when it comes for what I want in a good fanfic. Characters acting in character for the most part, a well done story, heart wrenching emotions, a good villain, and a tale lovingly told. And I think that's what I can say about all these fanfics. And why I started this. I mean, yeah, people are always going to do follow Equestrius. Past sins, but there are several more fanfics out there that, though short or even longer, could be just as good and do just as much in a short time as those classics or stuff like Silent Hill. And yet, sometimes they're overlooked when it comes to us live readers. Because sometimes we'll focus on one story, or we'll focus on a musical, or we'll focus on one chapter once. Or we'll focus on something small. Me? I focus on these fics. Because I want to prove something. That when it comes to the Brony fanfic community, from my experience, 90% of our stuff is readable and enjoyable. And a blast. 10%, 9% is really, really good. Like, say, Where Loyalties Lie, or a lot of Trainway's work. But 1% is something fantastic and utterly amazing. Just plain awesome. And that is something worth fighting for. And that's what I'm doing. I'm hoping that by showing you these, that there's always more to fanfiction than just clop, lemons, or a really good dark fix. That there can be sweet ones, kind ones, or heartbreaking ones. And to let some of these fade off into nothing because of reasons is kind of a loss for everybody. But I hope that by doing these live reads, I've kept a memoir of these classic stories, so other people can see what is out there. Because, the best part of looking through and feeling all that pain of getting pricked by thorns is holding up that little rose and seeing how there's always that beauty. Because after all, a rose is a rose. Martial art for easier. Aren't you forgetting something? Oh yeah! The next episode preview! Lyra, hit it! Trixie, what did you just do to me?
Nothing. Nothing at all. We're perfectly fine. Everything's perfectly fine.
Trixie, what did you do?
Nothing. Oh my god. What happened to me? What happened to my hooves? What are these things at the end of my arms? And what's wrong with my legs? And what are these round things on my chest with these little pink knobs? Hey, Trixie, we've got problems. You know that my mare friend is coming in any second now, and I've got a musical to put on. Oh, God. Trixie is so sorry. So sorry. Next time on the Luniverse, helping hands?
Oh, gods. Bon Bon is going to kill me. We'll be seeing you next time, audience.